Hello, and welcome to Borrow My Belief, the place where we inspire you to live your dreams. And we bring on guests to show you that it's possible. And this week I've got Ant Austin, and he's written a book called Who the Hell Are You? Which I've read. It's really good. I can highly recommend it. And I'm sure he's going to have some gems in this conversation that he can pay forward to you. So, welcome, Ant.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm
So,
really happy to be here. And yeah, thank you very much.
So I I know a little bit about you, but the audience doesn't. And I know that you've completely changed. You actually captured my attention when you were being interviewed in a different forum that we're both in. And I heard your story and I just felt compelled to immediately message you. And being a bit spiritual, I've got chills when I'm saying this. So I wonder if you could explain a little bit about your background, where you were, and where you've come to now, and why. Big question.
Yeah, the big question. So I suppose I've been a business owner now for like 14 years. And where this all started from really was I was the business owner of a moving company because when I left school at like 15, I worked for a moving company. And I started from the bottom and I made my way all the way up through that company to assistant manager at the time. I was only like 21 when I did that. So by the time I was 23, I decided to start my own moving company. So that was in 2010. And then I ran that business all the way up to a couple of years ago when I voluntarily closed it down because I just knew that I wasn't aligned with it. I was good at it. It was all that I knew, but it wasn't fulfilling me. And I knew that it was never going to get me to what I perceived as my dream life. I knew
Mhm.
that business was never going to get me there. It was kind of button head with my values, really. Like I valued my freedom, for example. But that particular business model, you almost become a victim of your own success because the more successful you are, the more staff you need to take on, another vehicle you need to buy, the more risk you're heading into. And ultimately, I always wanted to create a business like most people do naively. We go into it thinking, if I'm my own boss, I'm going to get more time off. But actually, it's quite the opposite. And especially with a traditional business such as that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people resonate with that. I mean, I've been taking notes here. There's a couple of things that I picked up on is having your own business. And I come across a lot of people that do this. I know you started at a really young age, but I come across people who set up their own business. They're really passionate and they've just created themselves another job, another prison, and they don't find themselves passionate about something they were once passionate about before. So I come across that and I heard you say the word fulfillment. I think that's a really big word to kind of unpick and mention there because once you've felt fulfillment, there's no going back, really, is there?
No, no. I think, I went into business naively, but it was the best thing I could have done because I learned so many lessons along the way. And, most of us go into business because we think, oh, my boss is an idiot. So we go into business and then we realize that we're working for an even bigger idiot ourselves. Do you know what I mean? Because then we're more harsh on ourselves than what our boss was. And yeah, I mean, when you're 23, I wasn't really thinking about fulfillment. I was just thinking about building a great business and giving myself more freedom, more money, more time off.
Mhm.
But yeah, once you understand and you can reconnect with what your version of success is and fulfillment, then yeah, there's almost no going back, like you say, because you would have felt this before when you were younger, and then you become an adult, and then you kind of just forget about it, and you think, well, that's just childlike thinking. but it doesn't have to be.
No. Yeah, no, I hear you. And so, I mean, how do we might have got people that are listening to this, and I usually think of the analogy of Sunday evening. You know, when people are going dreading work, they're going off to work the next day and they're dreaming. And I've got a client at the moment actually, and she's really, I've only had a couple of sessions, but she's really struggling to know what would make her fulfilled. She's so far down the path of non-fulfillment. Parents have never taught to her in that way. So she can't even get close yet to what fulfillment might be for her. What would you suggest to somebody who's in these scenarios, they're dreading work, they don't know what fulfillment is, they're in these scenarios? What would you suggest to like start tapping into what it is that they might want?
Yeah, it's just start like thinking about what you sort of love, and you can break it down into really small areas. I mean, even today I was just thinking to myself, I enjoy, I live on an island in Guernsey, so I enjoy going fishing. But I haven't really done that for the last couple of years because there's also the other side of me that always wants to make progress, and it's a waste of time sitting on a
Mm,
beach fishing. But actually, when I think about it, I love to do things like that just for the sake of doing them, and that's like something you can tap into straight away. You might have a hobby or something that you really love to do, but you never get round to doing it just because you've got commitments and things like that. But it's just starting to think about those really small things. And like you say, on a Sunday and you're dreading work the next day, sometimes it's easier to find out what you don't love to do because then you can go to the opposite because we live with laws, and one of the laws of the universe is the law of polarity. So that's just the law of opposites, basically. So one can't exist without the potential for the opposite to be there. So this is where we're going into there can't be a left without a right, top without a bottom, inside without an outside. So it's not possible for you to dread work on a Sunday without the potential for you to look forward to work on a
yeah.
Sunday. And it really, I know that sounds simple, but it just can't, and it is simple to just say that, but the work comes from what can I do to create that experience? So I'm looking forward to work on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm. And it could be something really small, couldn't it? It could be, I'm thinking here as you're talking, it could be, well, in the current job I'm in, how could I make this job more enjoyable whilst I'm
Mm.
figuring things out? And what aspects of my job might I enjoy?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it always comes back to self-awareness, which is why my book is called Who the Hell Are You? So,
Yeah.
for instance, it's knowing who you are. And again, breaking down to very small things. I know in my moving company, one of the things that I didn't like more than anything was being pestered on the phone all the time. So straight away there, we can start thinking, well, how can I get paid or create a business that doesn't involve people calling me 100 times a day to book my service or ask questions? So straight away there, you can identify what you don't love, but it's steering you into what you do actually like to do. So
Mm.
sometimes we don't need to add things, we just need to find ways to take things away. And for me, I don't like my phone going all the time. And again, this comes down to self-awareness. And the reason I know that is because I've done a lot of self-awareness work, and there's a behavioral assessment called DISC, which is 4 areas. I don't know if you've heard of it. And there's also VAC, which is visual, audible, kinesthetic, which is a learning assessment. We learn in different ways. Now, I am a visual person, therefore, I like someone to send me a text message or an email because I can read and respond. The kinesthetic, that's the doing. Like if I'm working with a kinesthetic person or I want to get a message across, I kind of go for a walk with them and talk because they take the information in. Um, Out of those three areas, you also have like a spaced out state where you kind of switch off, and mine is audible. It's not being rude. You hear people say, you don't listen or he doesn't listen or something like that. We all have a spaced out state. Now, my spaced out state is audible, which means I just need to work a little bit harder, to take the information in and learn what I'm being given, which is why the phone doesn't work for me,
Yeah.
you know. But that comes down to self-awareness. It's not that I can't talk on the phone. I can. I'm exaggerating it here, but do you see where I'm going with this? Because I'm aware that audible, I'm spaced out state, you know, I can create things to counteract that. And one of my staff members, actually, he was a really intelligent guy, but everyone said he doesn't listen. You tell him something, he don't listen. Once I understood the disc and the vac, I was like, no, he's just highly visual. So instead of telling him stuff, we would then send him a text message and he would get everything right. So it
Mm.
wasn't a case that he wasn't listening. It was just a case that, we didn't know enough. I didn't know enough about myself at that point to then see it in him and be able to manage people better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's really interesting because I trained people on a version of DISC for 15 years.
Mm.
And we used different acronyms for each one. So if I can remember, I'm a yellow, which I think is the I. And it's really liberating once you understand which one you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like my concentration span's really low, but yeah, I love connecting with people and doing this kind of thing. And I'm a kinesthetic in the back. And you're right, it's the self-awareness because now I did, even though I trained that for 15 years, I didn't really apply it for myself in that now I apply what I'm naturally drawn to and good at in my own businesses and for myself, and I play to that and I understand it's okay to be who I am. Whereas
Mm.
in the past, I used to try and change myself because I didn't think I was good enough. And actually, you've probably got something to say about that as well in the self-awareness. I was reading about it in your book. So limiting beliefs that we have, these on top with the self-awareness, on top of all this knowing yourself, there's these limiting beliefs that we have that hold us up. Do you want to speak a bit about that as well?
Yeah, so limiting beliefs are massive, and the best story I got on this is when I was in my moving company. I was really frustrated because I couldn't manage a team. I didn't feel I could manage a team. We were really successful, but I just knew I could be better at doing it. So I did what everyone else, what we're trained to do. I looked outside to solve the problem. So I read all the books on recruitment, team building, systems, implemented that all into my business and got incremental gains. But then I came across a limiting belief that I had, which was people will always let me down.
Mm.
Now, when I identified that limiting belief, because I'd heard about limiting beliefs, but I didn't study them or understand them, I got in touch with a coach and he helped me work through the belief. And I changed that belief to the right people will always be there to help and support me. Now, the second I changed that belief, this is no word of a lie, within a week, the wrong people in my business started handing in their resignation, saying they found other jobs and they'd be leaving. And they were worried about doing that, but I was secretly really happy. And that was the moment when I found out that, yeah, there's something massive in this. So we're the only problem that we'll ever have. So therefore, we are the only solution that we ever have. So whilst doing all of that study about recruitment was necessary in a way, I got a quantum leap result just through moving a belief.
Yeah.
Because whilst I held on to that belief, people always let me down. I could only attract people into my life who were going to let me down. I couldn't attract anything else because, again, the law of vibration, you you can only attract to you what's vibrating in harmony with you. And this is how the law of attraction and the law of vibration works. And everyone knows the law of attraction because it's quite out there, but it is a secondary law. The primary law is the law of vibration, how you feel.
Can you explain to me, because I mean, I absolutely get this myself, because I've watched it play out time and time again in my life. Sometimes in that I've worked on a belief, other times in that I've simply felt an emotion and the energy, my system's changed through feeling that emotion. And I've watched things change in front of my eyes. And many people listening might not even know about this. So you worked with a coach, which I think working with a coach is so key because we often can't even see our own limiting beliefs, no matter what stage of life we're in. We there's many things unconscious, but you said that that coach helped you work and change that belief. Can you just unpick that a little bit for us? How do you change a belief? How is it, we might have somebody who's I've got to stay in, I've got to stay doing this forever because I'll never earn enough money, or whatever it is. How can they start to unpick that and change that? Because to some people that might seem a bit miraculous that you changed that whole belief.
Hmm. And I think, again, this is where it comes back down to knowing who you are, because the first step to doing this is actually believing that you have a belief system. A lot of people can't even get over that. They'll just say, no, this is just the way I am. I'm inherently this way, and that's it. Some people do well, some people don't. So the first step to this is understanding how you work so you can then put yourself to work on the things that you want to bring into your life or get to. But if you don't understand how you work, and most people don't, then you're not going to have the belief to even change the belief. You're not going to have the knowledge
Yeah.
because it comes down to knowledge. And again, when we go law polarity, the opposite of knowledge is ignorance. So if you're ignorant that you have a belief system and you're ignorant to the laws of the universe, then there's no possible way that you're going to be able to even entertain the idea that you can simply identify a belief that you have, which is generally just a phrase, which is laced with emotion and lives in your body. There's a lot more to it than just a phrase, but the way I change beliefs is through a journaling process,
Yeah.
which I created, which I picked here, there, and everywhere, and I just put the best of it all together and create my own. So I do that through journaling. And I think it's a really good way to do it. You don't just have to do it through journaling, but I like it because I like writing. Another reason why I think it's really, really important is because one of my friends committed suicide a couple of years ago, and he was 40 and he left his wife and three young kids behind. And it was my belief then, this is when I really started getting into this properly. If he had the knowledge and knew who he was, he wouldn't have done what he did. He was being triggered by all of his beliefs from childhood, which were all unresolved. And the message just goes out, and you always hear it everywhere. You need to talk, you need to talk, you need to talk. And I'm thinking, well, sometimes that's not good enough because people like him and a lot of, people don't want to talk because it's so sort of scary to them to do it. So I thought there's got to be a way to do this without needing to talk. Obviously, talking is the best thing if you've got problems like that. But if you can identify your beliefs and journal them or any problem you have, you're essentially talking to yourself anyway, and you're processing and you're working through all of that.
I'm right there with you. I journal every day. If I didn't journal in a day, I think there would be something wrong now. In such a habit, which brings me to, well, a couple of things. We'll come back to a lot of your beliefs come when you're children, where they come from childhood experiences. But first of all, we've been in contact since we booked to do this. And you sent me an amazing journaling process about my identity, which I've been working on and loving doing. And it really does work. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm seeing my identity changing to this identity of this person who's at this next level that I'm heading towards. And it really gets you to think when you're journaling things out.
And it's really a fun exercise as well. And when we talk about think, we need to look at thinking like as a verb, as opposed to like we all get thoughts,
Mm.
but to actually think, that's a verb, that's an exercise. So then to sit down and think about what does the best version of me look like, and then write that down in as much detail as you possibly can, through as many roles as you possibly can, like the public speaker, the podcast presenter, the mum to this child, the dad to this child, to be that specific. Your mind is always looking at ways to, make that a reality. And you would just subconsciously start doing it. And this is what all the great actors do when they go into roles. And we're all living a movie, really. But we got to be stars in that movie. It's like the Elvis film. I'm a big fan of Elvis, but the recent Elvis film, Austin Butler acted like Elvis for 2 years. And all of these great singers like Michael Bublé, loads of people over the years have said, no one, it's impossible to sing like Elvis Presley. It's impossible. You can't do it. God kissed his voice was like something one of them said. And yet this actor, Austin Butler, with no singing experience whatsoever, who knows how to act in a certain way, can sing and talk just like Elvis. And that's what we can do. We've got to, like the movie directors and the actors, we've got to write the script first and then act the part, you know? So it can be done.
Makes sense. And what I've found since I've been doing my identity, I mean, I've done lots of things with this one. What I'm finding is I'm catching myself, oh, the person who has this thing in this identity, she doesn't behave like that. And it actually brings up which we'll move on to next, about childhood trauma, like things that are created in your childhood, or beliefs that are created in childhood. It actually brings those up to the surface to look at, like, why am I behaving like this? Why aren't I behaving like this? Identity, which is, you were saying before about childhood, we pick all these, well, beliefs up as we're growing up, don't we? They're not even ours in the first place.
Yeah, most of them are not ours. No, they're just ideas that we hold to be true because they were told to us by people who we thought couldn't possibly be wrong. And we heard them so often, we identified with them subconsciously, sometimes consciously. But when we get to an adult, we've got to then take the responsibility, I believe, to start creating our own life. If you have a belief, let's say my one, people will always let me down. I created that belief probably as a 10-year-old. And yet, when I was a 34-year-old business owner, it was stopping me from being a good manager. That's a problem. And another thing, what we want to understand is that, we don't have to be harsh on ourselves about these beliefs because that was the right belief for when I was a 10-year-old because it protected me and it served me so well. But this is where, when you're an adult, like late 30s or whatever, people seem to really, kind of awaken to all of this and onwards. then you've got the choice then to really change it if you want to. Because let's face it, not everyone, you don't need to change your limits and beliefs. But if you're pushing for higher than where you are, you're going to run into them because the reason you're not achieving your goals is because you haven't grown into them yet. Because if you could have achieved them goals, you would have.
Yeah,
So that's why I always set goals that I have to grow into. They're not like, can I do it? It's just like, do I want to do it?
I like that phrase, grow into. And I was something that I noted when you told your story about your belief changing is something that uh, let me try and explain this, something that I struggled with for a long time, because when I watched The Secret, as some people have, the manifestation movie, I went all into visualization mode. And I've been in really doing mode in my life, working in corporate jobs. And then I've been in really spiritual mode in my life, living in spiritual communities. I've lived in Glastonbury in the UK and of Mexico. And then I noticed these two polarities. One where people are doing, like when you studied how to manage people, and then the other one where they're being, visualizing. And for a while there, I was kind of confused. What's the mid here? But listening
Yeah.
to your story here, you did the doing, then you did the changing of the belief. You still had to do something after that, and it only happened when you did the being.
Yeah, there is a balance there. I did the doing because I was raised on the belief that if you work hard, you're guaranteed to be successful. Now, because beliefs are so extreme, I took that as if I move more boxes in my moving company today than I did tomorrow, then I'm more successful. That's how extreme beliefs are. So I did all the doing, but that was never scalable method, you know what I mean? But that's how powerful beliefs are. They have you convinced that, yeah, you just got to work harder. Oh, you're not successful at this. You've got to move more boxes than yesterday. You've got to learn to streamline things. You've got to do this, that, and grind. It's all just a story, and you find yourself 10 years later still doing it, and you've made no progress.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did the doing, and I came around to I've always had an interest, like what makes people successful and what makes someone not successful. I've always looked at that. Like I said, I kind of study Elvis Presley quite a lot just because he had such high stardom in a time where it was hard to sort of get your name out there and things like that. So I thought, like, but I always thought that even when I was younger, because my mum liked Elvis. So I always thought, well, what's the difference between him and me? Because we're both humans. So I've always had that question on the go. With the being side of it, yeah, it definitely helps. But I think people can go too far on the meditating and the being because
Mm.
you cannot meditate your way to success. You cannot your way to success. You've got to, you can do all the positive thinking and all the visualization you like, but there's simply some things you've got to do after you finish meditating.
Yeah.
So I do see both ends of the spectrum here. Everything is energy, but you do have to do some things to make that happen.
Yeah, that's what I discovered. I live, like I said, I lived both extremes and I live in the middle now.
Yeah, so you've got to be in
Yeah,
the middle, haven't you? Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah. And we've talked about your removal company, and I know that you're not in that removal company anymore and that you've completely changed your life. And that's a bit scary for some people to do that leap of faith and to do that. How was that for you, completely transitioning your life into something that's more fulfilling?
yeah, it's obviously scary. There's no getting around that. But I think through my upbringing was quite tough. But the good thing about it was it's made me very brave. So I'm very brave in order to do things. I think I got a lot of courage and I study Think and Grow Rich because all the success principles are in there,
Hmm.
like most days, to be honest with you. And you need faith, desire, persistence. Now, I probably had all of those three naturally. There's 13 principles, but they are the main three. So I always had a desire to do well at something. I just wasn't specific. So at first that was football. Then it was removals because it was just what was in front of me. And yeah, now it's the personal development and the self-awareness. But yeah, you've got to believe in yourself and back yourself and just go for it.
Yeah.
Because to me now it's like a game. It's a bit of a game because now I know about belief systems and now I understand about identity, and how you can future pace your identity, which is the process I helped you with, how you can act a certain way and then you become a certain way. You don't want to act forever. You act until you habitually are a different person. It's kind of a game to me now just to see how far this can go.
Yeah, me too.
So it's kind of like, you know, I look at people at the top of where I am, like Tony Robbins, I suppose. I just think, yeah, what is the difference, really?
That's a really good way of looking at it. It's really interesting you should say that. I was in visiting my friend today, and she knows me from childhood. So people, people, I'm visiting the town where I grew up, and these people grew up with me. She doesn't know me now, and I went in and I took my book, and she was like laughing, and she's got a shop, and one of her customers came in, and I think she must be about 11 years old, comes in every week when she's visiting her grandparents. And I gave her a book and I signed it and said one day I was going to be famous.
Mm.
And I just was joking and pretending to be that person. It's so much fun, isn't it? When my
Yeah,
friend was laughing, like, I know you, Joanne.
yeah, it's good. It is good fun. But that's what life should be, right? It should be fun.
Yeah,
Like,
I
we should
agree.
be here slogging away and, we should be spending time with our families, having experiences, because that's what life is really, isn't it? It's just a collection of experiences. And, when people pass away, it's always like a reminder to me. It's just like all those things they're worrying about didn't really matter, did it?
No, just
You
enjoy
know,
the day you're in.
they're gone
That's
now and
it.
it didn't really matter. So it's like, why, like, not that I don't worry, but it's just, everyone's human, but we've got to battle against that, I think, for sure, because we're so powerful, but we don't understand that. If we don't understand ourselves, we don't understand how powerful we are. Like, we've been given creative faculties that, like, no other life form has. Like, why? What is the reason for that? It's because we're here to create. And
Mm.
if you see any person in a creative role, they're generally happy.
Yeah. So anybody who's living authentically themselves. And I never really understood that. It took me till 49. I'm
Mm,
55 now. And it was 49 when I'd created the most incredible life, like materialistically. And I actually had loving people around me as well. And I had this moment where I realized I wasn't fulfilled and I wasn't living true to who I was. That's where my
yeah.
journey started. And it's such a different way of being once I started to follow the path that, like, I suppose I would call it my soul wanted me to follow
Mm.
inside. Yeah.
Because again, a lot of people do that, don't they? Because again, we're taught to think through our senses of our eyes, our ears, and we're taught to think through those. So getting all the material things, people think that's success. A lot of people do, but it's not necessarily like, you've got to define your own version of success. That's what I believe. And yeah, when you think through your senses like that all the time, you're kind of limited. But your creative faculties, your inner senses, they're limitless. There's no measure to how far they extend to. And that's why my business is called Be the Limitless You. Because
Brilliant.
again, before you can do something, you first must be something. And that's really important to understand.
Yeah, I agree. So if you were to, well, first of all, what's next for you? I know you're creating a course.
Yeah, so I'm creating a course at the moment. I've taken one chapter out of my book, which is called You Are Unbelievable. And that's just a play on words that you are an unbelievable person, but you also have a belief system, and all of those beliefs are unbelievable. So you can learn new beliefs. So there's a little play on words there. And I really want to go deep into that. So I'm creating an audio program at the moment, which I will also create into a video course as well. But I'm going Audible at the moment just because I want to write everything down. I want it on a script. I don't just want to freeball it because I feel that I might miss some information out. And I feel if people are paying money, then they should get the very best at what I can deliver. So I'm in the process of doing that at the moment. So that's going to be fantastic. It's going to be really deep. And that is going to be a process where people can identify, reevaluate, and change their limiting beliefs into powerful beliefs. Because,
I'm really looking forward to that one.
yeah, because it's really simple. Our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. So if we reevaluate what we believe, our belief about it will change. And it's that simple. And with that, our energy changes and the world changes. I know that sounds a bit
No, it doesn't sound
woo woo.
anything.
Is that the word? Is that the
Yeah.
word?
Well, this is a channel that is woo woo, even for those people that aren't woo woo watching. I believe that the ripple effect from the one person can change the world. So you've there's a converted person here.
Yeah. But again,
So,
just to touch on how we think through our senses, like with the laws, a lot of people will say, well, the law of vibration, attraction, it doesn't exist. But no one questions the law of gravity. Why? Because they can see a pen falling from a height. Again, thinking through the senses, because they can see it, they believe it's a law of gravity. But if you tell them, well, there's a law of attraction and a law of vibration, law of polarity, because they can't see those things, a lot of people would just say, no, that's a load of rubbish. But this is where we've got to understand we've got our eyes that give us sight, but we also have perception, which is insight. And that insight is so much more powerful than our sight. Our eyes are limited.
what a great way of putting it. It wasn't until I saw circumstances change before my very eyes that I really truly became to believe in these things. And yet I'd been studying them since I was 22. I think having the experiential happen to you time and time, or happen for you time and time again, I don't question those types of things anymore. It's in the experience
Yeah.
and the self-awareness, like you said.
Self-awareness again, yeah. And when
Yeah,
you're aware that you're just like the chapter in my book, You Are Electric, you've read that one, haven't you?
yeah,
Like when
yeah.
I wrote that down, like even the people who were helping me like with the book, my editors and that, they were like, you should change that. And I was like, no, like we are electric. We emit a pulse just like electric. We have an energy field around us just like electric. We are electric. And therefore, just like electricity, energy can only flow from positive to negative. You've only got to ask any electrician that. So we're electric. If we're in a positive mood, we've got bundles of energy. If we're in a negative mood, we can't find the energy. So we've got to always look after ourselves in terms of our vibration. And again, that comes down to restructuring your belief system, comes down to there's a lot of things, the way you use language, use positive words, think positively, find the good in every situation, just look after your vibration.
I'm going to give you a really great story about your chapter on electricity.
Yeah.
You're from, I think I know the answer to this question before I ask it, but you're familiar with synchronicity, and the more we live in a higher vibration, the synchronicities show up. It's kind of mind-blowing, right?
Mm.
So I spent a weekend with a friend, and he was reading a book about the human body and electricity and the torus field, and the science on it. And when I'd finished with the weekend, I went home and I opened your book to where I was, and it was the chapter on electricity. And I messaged him and was like, oh my God, like you were reading that in a different book, and now I'm reading it in this book. So if you hadn't put that chapter in there, I wouldn't have had that experience.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I find
Yeah.
that at the moment, all these things are always happening, but we just need to become aware of them.
Yes.
Like I
Yes.
was chatting to my friend about planning. I need to get better at planning. And now every book, every video, every audio that I listen to, I can hear plan in there. I was
Yeah.
like, this has been right in front of my eyes the whole
Yeah.
time. And I've
Yeah.
just not seen it or heard it or been aware of it.
Yeah. It's like when you decide to buy a car, isn't it? They call it the red car syndrome.
Yeah,
You,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just what you focus on grows.
So what a great conversation. I do have a couple of questions that I always ask. So my first question is, if you could go back to the version of you that was in that removal business, wasn't living in a fulfilled state, had that limiting belief, um, I mean, obviously everything's always perfect, but what would you say to him if you could go back and talk to you then? What would you gift him in words?
I would just say, just believe more, because you have all the answers you need inside of you, and just believe, really, and stop worrying, I suppose, because I
Mm,
wouldn't change any of it. This is really important. I wouldn't change all of those years that I spent grafting night and day for that removal company because it taught me so much in so many areas and it's made me so strong, you know. So I wouldn't change any of it. But yeah, I should have been more confident and backed myself a little bit more. That probably come a bit earlier as well, because I always wanted to be a professional footballer and I was good enough to be one, but I wasn't mentally good enough to be one. So I've been learning this the whole my life really, because I'd be the best player in football training. This is my first love really. And in the game, I wouldn't show up sometimes and it was confidence. And my coaches would just say, just be more confident. You need to believe in yourself more. And I would always say to them, well, how do I do that? And they would say, well, you just got to believe. They didn't know. Like they didn't know. Do you know what I mean? So I've always been into this and asking those questions. How can I believe in myself more? How can I be more confident?
mm.
And this is what I believe I had to go through in order to communicate that message to the world.
Isn't that interesting that I mean I'm of the same kind of mind of as you in my journey. Everything was perfect up to this moment. Every single thing, even the things that I regretted sometimes. And when I'm journaling, like, oh my God, that horrible circumstance was so perfect. And I find it really interesting that you've said that. And also, you're now creating a course on beliefs.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because my friend, I have an accountability partner, and he likes my ideas, and I was coaching him just to see if my ideas worked because they worked on me. And he goes, "I'll be your guinea pig, just do them on me," And his life's transformed, and he's had massive results. And he goes, "Right, I'm getting behind you with this, and I want to be a coach and help you build this business." So he's helping me as well. So we're kind of doing the course together, and yeah, it's just really good because, he's come through on this as well. I kind of forgot what I was going to say there.
So is it something about his journey that's led him to that point as well?
Yeah, because he's changed all of his limiting beliefs as well,
Yeah,
and that was the fastest transformation kind of thing because you've
yeah.
got to do a lot of learning and self-awareness. but the fastest transformation is changing your limiting beliefs.
The unlearning, kind of in a
Yeah,
way,
the
isn't it?
unlearning. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
unlearning what you've been told. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, this is what I was going to say. So he said to me, "Oh, I did a meditation the other day about meeting my future self." And he was this bloke and like this. And I goes, "Oh, I did that a couple of years ago. I'm going to dig my journal out because I date everything."
Mm.
So I dug it out, and it was just hilarious because my future self said to me like 2 years ago, he says, "You you have to believe in yourself more, and you have to bring the word believe alive to the world because it's undervalued and people don't understand it, the power of it." And then like within this meditation, this mindset thing, it was like, what gift is your future self giving you? And it given me this like jewelry box thing, when you lift the lid up and there's like a figurine that dances, it goes around,
Yeah.
and it was engraved with the words believe. And I had journaled that my future self gave me this because I think he was trying to convey to me that life is just a dance and all you got to do is believe. So that
And I
was,
bet that makes sense now to you.
yeah, yeah. It's just mad, isn't it?
I mean, I've done a lot of that kind of thing, and to me now, one of the things that I had to overcome, my mum was schizophrenic, and I didn't want people to think I was crazy. I spent my life proving that I wasn't crazy. And one of the things that I've overcome recently, and very recently, is just being my full woo-woo self, spiritual
Mm,
self, and being comfortable in there. That has taken quite a lot of time for me to reach that point. And what I found is I found myself in dental conferences where people are seeking me out to talk about this. And these are scientific people who've said, before they've not really responded very well and the only thing that's changed is me. Now they're seeking me out to talk about it.
mm.
That's
It's
it.
crazy because, like, yeah, again, we're taught to go out and get this information, aren't we? But actually, we have all the information. We just need to learn how to use what we already have. It reminds
Yeah.
me of Jim Rohn, where he says some success is not something you pursue, it's something you attract by the person you become. So instead of going after it, you stay, you work on yourself.
Yep.
And it took me about 3 years to understand what he meant by that.
And you see it very much in your story where you change that belief about your team at work. The
Yeah,
it's the internal um it's the
conflict.
internal,
Right? Yeah.
and it kind of, in a way, it doesn't get any easier. I'm working on something just now, but you learn to become, well, this is my opinion, I wonder what your opinion is. You learn to become comfortable being uncomfortable, because in order to do this and to grow in, my mentor at the moment says your business can only be as grow as much as you do.
Mm,
And you said growing into the business, which is really very similar.
yeah.
And I'm learning to be, problems never go away, because that's the kind of growing pains and the training ground. And it's about learning to be uncomfortable, isn't it? About working with, looking at what's going on inside, even if you don't like it.
Yeah. So you like this one with what you just said. You will only grow a business to your own level of incompetence.
Oh wow, I do like that. Yeah, right, I
So
heard that one yet.
that's an interesting one, you know.
Yeah.
You'll grow a business and you get incompetent and you're like, I can't grow no more, so you got to do some more learning.
Yeah, knowledge. Yeah, that's another thing my mentor says, knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. So I did a lot of
So,
business coaching, and I did a lot of business coaching with Brad Sugars, who's like probably the best business coach in the world. And he would brush over beliefs and talk about it and identity. But back then, I didn't want to know. I just wanted to know how to make more money for my business.
yeah,
And when I met him in person, I said to him, I'm doing your identity iceberg at the moment. And he talks about skills, beliefs, values, but he's mainly about business, so he doesn't focus on that. And when I met him in person, he said to me, he said, yeah, he said, to be honest with you, none of the business advice works if you don't have your identity iceberg sorted.
yeah,
So you need to work on that first. But he says, I don't focus on that because I'm trying to get people to raise profit in their business.
yeah. I used to, in a previous job that I had, I worked for a company that had software for it was dental. And we would teach dentists how to run their business to full capacity. And I was in that job for 15 years, and I would get frustrated and speak to management and say, we can teach them all day long, every day. They're not going to, many of them, majority of them didn't implement what we taught them because they had everything going on inside. And that's actually what led me during COVID into training as a coach. And I was already on that journey myself, but how can I help other people? Because I could see it didn't matter how much business knowledge they got. It was all about the internals.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So if you have any message for our audience as we wrap up, like one little nugget or something, like that you could just say, what little thing would you say would be key for anybody listening, that's a bit of gold dust for them?
I think if you want to advance towards your dream life with confidence, and you need to understand what that is in fine detail. And that comes down to knowing who the hell you are. It really does. It always comes back to that because most people think they're not good enough to achieve the success they seek. Now, that's
Mm,
not uncommon, but through a self-awareness and personal development process, you will get a firm knowing that you can achieve the success that you desire. And here's the difference between like knowing and believing. Like you only need belief to get you off the ground. Once you know something, you don't need belief anymore.
yeah,
You
that
know.
was gold dust.
So yeah, that's what I can come up with, I'm afraid.
That's a great one. So where would people find you?
So I've got a website which is bethelimitlessyou.com. That's probably the best place to find me. And I'm on Facebook as well. I do have a community on there, and I'm on Instagram as well. I'm not very active at the moment because I'm laser focused in on my program, and social media takes my attention. I need to laser focus in on doing this. But I've still got the messenger on Facebook, so people can message me, speak to me. But again, this again comes down to self-awareness. I know where I put my attention, my energy will flow, and the more things that distract me, the worse this program is going to be. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah,
need to focus laser in because I'm going to see things that will just distract me. So that's kind of what I do.
you know yourself. So I'll pop the website in the description.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got an email address as well, which is just ant@bethelimitlessyou.com.
and I look forward to you letting me know this course has come out.
Yeah, yeah, so it's going to be really good. Again, though, I do have a date in mind, but I'm not going to hold myself to it. It's done when it's done.
Yeah.
You know, again, this is another thing about like the bravery and the courage as well, because most people be like, no, you need to get it done to get revenue in and things like that, which I won't do. I just be like, no, it's done when it's done.
But that's you holding to your values.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to charge people money for something that they're not going to get massive value and transformation from.
Yeah. That was brilliant. Thank you, Ant. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you.